So, Stephen D here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I'm joined by one of the writers for Pure Media, the magazine. Hello, Trevor Stammers.
Hello, Stephen. Good to be with you.
It is an absolute pleasure to be joined by you, and we're here to talk about your column in the magazine, your article in the March edition of the magazine. So, this is all about understanding ethics. Let's start with what is it that you get up to? Let's just introduce. What do you do?
Well, my job for the last sort of 15 years of my career was teaching ethics, which is a branch of philosophy and a branch of moral philosophy that seeks to offer the rationale, even about the existence of right and wrong, let alone about deciding what things are right and wrong, or very occasionally in between. So that's ethics in a nutshell, I think.
Excellent. Yeah. It's a really daunting, potentially daunting sort of subject. But when you break it down, and when I read these articles, it seems fairly straightforward. So let's jump into your March article, Understanding Ethics, No Time for Antinatalism. Do you mind giving us an overview of what antinatalism is?
Yes, well, I've only just discovered today, actually, in preparation for this interview, that although I first came across it as an ethicist about 3 years ago now, in human geography, antinatalism has been a subgrouping for quite a while. And basically, from a bioethical point of view, antinatalists believe that it is morally wrong to have children. And the subject is intrinsically tied up with human geography because obviously population control has been something of controversy, but importance for many, many decades. And certainly one way of trying to control it is by having the belief that it is morally wrong to have any children at all. And that viewpoint was famously put across in a global journal of bioethics in 2023, I think it was, which is when it first came to my attention there.
It's really interesting. It's definitely very new to me. I imagine many readers and listeners this might be new to, but the word antinatalism may be new to me. I think the concept you may come across quite a bit, really.
It's a confusing term, I think, because obviously most people, when they think of antenatal, are thinking about obstetric care and almost the opposite of antinatalism with an I. So if folks are looking it up, it's important to go for ANTI and then natalism. But you will find quite a lot out there now on the internet about it.
Yeah, it's a really, I suppose there's a small part of me that's a bit like unnerved by even the concept of it. It just seems so far out there, but it is something that a lot of people have come to believe. And what are the reasons that people would come to believe that? Why are they putting this forward, do you think?
Well, I think it's very closely aligned with a subject that many more people will understand and, like myself, be very concerned for, and that is care for the planet. And I don't think that probably it's by accident that some of its leading advocates are vegans, because vegans and antinatalists share a common concern about cruelty to animals, and even the fact that we eat them, we're cruel to them, and so it does tie in very much, I think, with environmentalism. You don't have to be an antinatalist, obviously, to be a committed environmentalist. But I think that the vast majority of committed antinatalists certainly have environmentalism as one of the reasons out there. Humans are bad for the planet, is the idea. So the fewer of us out there, then the better our world will become. That's one of the quotes that I had in the article from a very prominent antinatalist.
Yeah, it's I definitely can see that connection between environmentalism and antinatalism. But as you say, you don't have to be an environmentalist, and you don't have to go together. But yeah, there's definitely I can definitely see some of that. But I guess what's concerning about this is we are seeing quite a falling birth rate, and I've seen some statistics on that. But you bring that out in the article, and what might be the connection there between antinatalism and this birth decline?
Yes, well, I think another underlying reason that I sense behind this is something I first encountered actually more than 20, 30 years ago, where time vanishes, but very early on in my career. I went to a ethics seminar up in London, and I arrived early to the seminar group that I was going to, and I was having general chit-chat with the person leading it. And I mentioned to her that I had 3 children, whereupon she immediately said, "I hate children," and moved on. And that reminded me that when I was at school, the head boy at my school at the time also said to me at one point in conversation that he hated children. So although this is not something that's generally articulated out loud, it does exist, and there are often very deep-seated reasons for it. So I think from where I sit, this philosophy has one of my fellow ethicists in Australia, Michael Cook, has called this a nihilistic philosophy, that ultimately its focus is on annihilation and destruction, because if you take it to its ultimate end, of course, that's where it will lead. So I think that makes it very, very difficult to talk about, but people are talking about it, knowingly or not, within the concern for the drop in replacement birth rates in Western countries. And this is a major cause of concern, not delight, for most governments. And Britain is undoubtedly part of a developed, the developed nations this largely applies to, with a falling replacement birth rate. And the statisticians have computed that needs to be at 2.1 in order to replace those in a population who are dying. And so when deaths exceed the births by an ever-widening margin, then obviously that country is going to face considerable difficulty in, for example, supporting the older population, finding a younger workforce, schools will close, etc. I think many nations are now waking up to that. In Europe, Malta now has the record for the lowest replacement rate, and it's well below 1, I think. Malta is possibly about 1 rather than 2.1, but South Korea has the record worldwide of being less than 1. I think it's about 0.8 now. So many Asian nations are very concerned about it, and there, I think, often population pressures, so Hong Kong, Taiwan, where you have historically had very large populations crowding together, that may be a reason why the birth rate has been falling. But also, there is high pressure for people to succeed in their jobs, both men and women, and children can obviously be seen as just obstructive to that. So it's a very, very complex web of issues.
Yeah. So from that, would it be safe to assume that antinatalism, if it's causing lower birth rates, which has all these negative effects, is it right to think that this view, antinatalism, isn't a healthy one?
Well, from where I sit, it is a nihilistic view that sees people as the problem, whereas, as you might expect, as a doctor trained in the 1970s and 80s, one of the things you were often asked about at interview was, why do you want to be a doctor? And a common answer then would have been, because I care for people and want to see them flourish. So it goes for me directly against my calling as a medic, but also against my commitment as a Christian. As a Christian, I believe that the Bible teaches that when God created the world, including you and me, that he declared us good. And one of the people that I quote in the article in the March issue was Dame Cecily Saunders, who I never met, but I did some of my training at St. Christopher's Hospice, which she founded. And she was one of the great innovators introducing palliative care into this country. And one of the things that she commonly said to her patients needing reassurance, it's good that you exist. So, yes, I do see it as being problematic from a humanistic point of view, and also from a Christian point of view. And I think the negative side of it is exceedingly dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading it, and I was your article, and definitely it was sort of, ooh, this seems a bit scary almost, to be honest. Because as a Christian, we believe we're all created in the image of God, and as you pointed out, God said when He created the world that it was good. So when you have this sort of viewpoint that humanity is almost bad for the planet, it's kind of just seems a little bit dodgy, I suppose is the best word for it.
Yes. Funnily enough, I suppose we do get perhaps a little hint of it, even in the New Testament. And I'm thinking of the occasion when the disciples were getting upset about parents who wanted to bring their children to Jesus and trying to fob them off. And Jesus has to take them to one side and says, no, let them come to me, because of such is the kingdom of God. And there is something about the nature of childhood, the wonderment of it, the joy of being alive of it, the desire to learn and grow, that Jesus recognized in children, and recognizes as the potential that he's given to each one of us. So I think that's very, very important to note.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really interesting to learn about antinatalism, and I think it's really valuable that we have a good understanding of that. And it's really good that you brought to us some of these statistics and this data around birth rates and stuff like that. If there was something you wanted people to take away from this article, what would that be?
Well, I think all of the things that I've mentioned are important, but I think at a time when our nation is thinking about reforming British law to legally abort children up to birth, that we really do need to also just remember that antinatalism in Western countries is not just about birth rates, it's also about conception rates. And very few listeners will probably be aware that the WHO, the World Health Organization, reckons that about 30% of pregnancies end in abortions globally. And in this country, for the last date of record, we had over 250,000 of them. And that is something I think that we need to bear in mind if we are seriously contemplating making that procedure available up to birth. And that's perhaps a very sad way to conclude a talk about antinatalism, but it is a mechanism whereby antinatalism, I think, is being put to effect in the world that everybody will know about. And it is very, very difficult to talk about it, but there's never been, I think, a more important time when we do need to talk about the broader implications of it. But a full session on that is probably for another time. So I'll draw to a close there.
Yeah, it's really good to talk about these things. It's so important that we do. And so I'm really glad you're able to bring ethics to Pure Media, the magazine, and now also to the radio with Pure Media, the magazine, the radio show. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and to talk about this thing, which is entirely new to me. I'm sure it's new to a lot of readers and also to listeners. I guess the basic concept we're quite familiar with, but the word antinatalism is new to us. So I'm really glad that you were able to bring that to us to help us understand it a bit more and to consider some of the ramifications for it. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for leading me through it, Steve.